After 60, your body doesn't bounce back the way it used to, and maybe you've noticed that getting out of a chair takes a breath longer, or that your balance wavers when you bend to tie a shoe. Here's what most doctors won't mention during a 15-minute checkup. Nearly 40% of adults over 65 experience a serious fall each year, and the majority of those falls happen not on icy sidewalks or uneven trails, but inside the home during ordinary movements like standing up or reaching for a cup. The real shock isn't the statistic itself, but what sits beneath it. Your muscles aren't just getting weaker with age, they're also forgetting how to talk to your brain. That communication breakdown between nerve and fiber is called neuromuscular disconnection, and it begins silently in your 50s, accelerating every year you ignore it. Physical therapists in Japan have spent decades studying why their elderly population maintains independence, far longer than peers in the West, and they've identified a short, daily movement sequence that rebuilds that nerve muscle. Conversation in as little as 5 minutes a morning. You won't find this ritual in American gyms or printed on handouts at your local senior center, but it's the reason 70-year-olds in Okinawa still garden without assistance and 80-year-olds in Kyoto navigate stairs with confidence. Before we walk through each movement, I want to share 2 things that surprised even seasoned physiotherapists. Number 2 is a single leg exercise done while brushing your teeth that resets your vestibular system faster than any balance board. Number 1 is a seated twist so gentle it looks like you're doing nothing yet. It targets the exact spinal muscles that prevent the forward hunch most people assume is inevitable. Both take less than 90 seconds combined, and both deliver results you can feel within 2 weeks. I'll reveal those shortly, but first, let me ask you this. Drop a comment below with your age and the city or country you're watching from, because I'm curious how many of you have heard of these movements before today. Chances are the answer is 0, and that's exactly the problem we're here to solve. Let's start with why 5 minutes matters and why it has to be every single morning. Your nervous system runs on patterns, and when you repeat a movement at the same time each day, your brain writes that pattern into long-term memory. Neurologists call this motor consolidation, and it works best in the first 30 minutes after you wake up when your cortisol is naturally high and your neurons are primed to learn. Miss that window, and you're still building strength, but you lose the accelerated learning effect that makes these exercises so efficient. Think of it like this. Strength is the size of the muscle, but coordination is the quality of the wire connecting that muscle to your brain. After 60, the wire frays faster than the muscle shrinks, and most Western exercise programs ignore the wire entirely. They load you with resistance bands and water aerobics that grow the muscle but never restore the signal. Japanese movement therapy does the opposite. It assumes you have enough muscle already. You've been walking and lifting and living for 6 decades, and it focuses exclusively on cleaning up the signal so the muscle you have fires when you need it to. Here's a concrete example of what happens when that signal degrades. Researchers tracking fall incidents in seniors found that the time it takes your foot to react when you start to tip forward increases by roughly 30% between age 60 and age 75. That delay sounds trivial, maybe a tenth of a second, but it's the difference between catching yourself and hitting the floor. The Japanese exercise sequence we're about to cover trains one thing above all else: reaction speed at the joint level. It teaches your ankle to adjust before your conscious brain even registers the stumble, and it teaches your hip to stabilize before your torso leans too far. These are reflexes you were born with, but like any reflex, they dim when you stop challenging them. A 5-minute morning ritual is enough challenge to keep them bright. Now let's get into the movements themselves. I'll walk you through all 5 in the order you should perform them, explaining what each one does, why it works, how to do it safely, and what to watch for as you improve. Remember, this is a sequence, not a menu. You do all 5 every morning in the same order because each movement prepares your nervous system for the next. Skipping one is like pulling a card from the middle of a house of cards. The structure holds, but it's nowhere near as stable. Movement 1 is called Ashi Yubi Tsukamu in Japanese, which translates directly to toe grip or toe grasp. You sit on the edge of a chair with your feet flat, and you practice picking up a small towel or a folded washcloth using only your toes. It sounds almost comical, but your toes contain more nerve endings per square inch than nearly any other part of your body except your fingertips. And when you activate those nerves, first thing, in the morning, you wake up, the entire sensory map of your lower body in your brain. Most people over 60 have spent years wearing cushioned shoes that do all the gripping work for them, so those toe nerves have gone quiet. This drill brings them back online. You place the towel flat on the floor about 6 inches in front of your toes. Then you curl your toes down and try to scrunch the fabric toward you. If you can't grab it at first, just curl and relax for 30 seconds. Within a week, you'll be pulling that towel across the floor, and within 2 weeks, you'll notice your balance improving during ordinary walking because your toes are finally helping stabilize every step instead of just going along for the ride. I worked with a woman named Patricia, 71, retired postal clerk from Ohio, who came to me after her second fall in 3 months. Both times she tripped over nothing, just caught her toe on flat carpet and went down hard. Her doctor ordered a bone density scan and prescribed calcium, but nobody asked about her feet. When I had her try the towel grip, she couldn't move the fabric even a quarter inch. Her toes splayed out like she'd never used them. We started with just the curling motion, no towel, 20 reps each foot every morning while she drank her coffee. After 10 days, she could grip the towel. After 3 weeks, she told me she felt glued to the ground when she walked. Her words exactly, like her feet had become sticky. She hasn't fallen since, and that was 8 months ago. The mechanism is simple. Your toes send position data to your cerebellum dozens of times per second, and when that data is rich and detailed, your cerebellum can make micro-corrections to your posture without you thinking about it. When the data is fuzzy because your toes are numb from disuse, your cerebellum guesses, and sometimes it guesses wrong. Toe grip removes the guesswork. Here's your protocol. Sit in a sturdy chair with your feet bare. Place a hand towel flat on the floor. Curl your toes and try to pull the towel toward you. Do this for 30 seconds per foot. If it's too easy, fold the towel thicker or switch to a small book. If it's too hard, just practice curling your toes in the air 10 times, rest, then 10 more. Do this every single morning. No shoes, no socks. You want direct contact between your skin and the surface because that's where the nerve feedback lives. As you improve, add a challenge. Try picking up a marble or a smooth stone with your toes and transferring it from one side of your foot to the other. That level of dexterity tells you your nervous system is rewiring. Movement 2 is the one I mentioned earlier, and it's designed to be stacked with something you already do, so you never forget it. In Japanese, it's called katachi baransu, which means single-leg standing balance, but the genius is in the timing. You do this while brushing your teeth, every morning and every evening. You stand on one leg for the entire time the toothbrush is in your mouth, roughly 2 minutes, then you switch legs the next session. If 2 minutes sounds impossible, start with 30 seconds and build up by 15 seconds per week. The reason this works so well is that your vestibular system, the balance organ in your inner ear, recalibrates fastest when you pair it with a routine task that requires zero cognitive load. Brushing your teeth is automatic. You've done it 10,000 times. Your brain doesn't have to think about the brushing, so it can dedicate all its processing power to the balance challenge. When you try to balance in the middle of the living room with nothing else going on, your brain gets bored and you wobble. When you balance while brushing, your brain stays engaged because it has a job to do, and the balance improvement happens almost as a side effect. There's research from movement science labs showing that even healthy older adults lose single-leg standing time at a rate of about 2 seconds per year after age 60. By 75, many people can't stand on one foot for more than 10 seconds without grabbing something. That decline predicts fall risk better than almost any other single test. But here's the kicker. You can reverse years of decline in just 3 weeks of daily practice. I'm talking about going from 8 seconds to 30 seconds in under a month. Your vestibular system is incredibly plastic, meaning it adapts fast when you challenge it consistently, but it also degrades fast when you ignore it. This toothbrushing hack ensures you never ignore it because you're already brushing your teeth twice a day. You're not adding a new task, you're layering a balance drill onto an existing habit. That's the secret to sustainability. Let me tell you about Raymond, 68, former electrician from Michigan, who couldn't stand on one leg for more than 5 seconds when we started. He'd grab the counter, wobble, put his foot down, frustrated. I told him to try it while brushing, and suddenly he hit 12 seconds on the first attempt. Why? Because he wasn't thinking about the balance. He was thinking about his molars. Within 2 weeks, he was brushing the full 2 minutes on one leg, switching legs night and morning. His wife told me he started standing on one leg while waiting for the coffee to brew, while talking on the phone, just because he could. That confidence spillover is real. Once your brain trusts your balance in one context, it starts trusting it everywhere. Raymond's last check-in, he told me he'd climbed a ladder to clean his gutters, something he'd been afraid to do for 2 years. I didn't tell him to climb a ladder, but I wasn't surprised. When your balance comes back, your world gets bigger. Here's how you do it safely. Stand next to a counter or wall so you can touch it lightly if you start to tip. Lift one foot about 6 inches off the ground, knee bent, and hold. Keep your standing leg slightly bent, never locked, because a locked knee actually makes balance harder. Look straight ahead at a fixed point, not down, because your eyes feed your vestibular system and a stable gaze stabilizes your body. If you wobble, touch the wall with one finger, just enough to steady yourself, then let go. Don't grab and hold. The goal is to teach your body to recover from a wobble, not to avoid wobbling altogether. As you get stronger, move your hand farther from the wall. Eventually, you'll be able to do this in the middle of the bathroom with nothing nearby, and that's when you know your vestibular system has fully recalibrated. Alternate legs each session so both sides develop equally. If one leg is weaker, give it an extra session per day until it catches up. Imbalance between legs is a hidden fall risk because your brain compensates by shifting your weight, and that shift throws off your gait. Movement 3 brings us back to sitting, and it's the spinal twist I promised you at the start. The Japanese term is sawari neji, which means seated twist, and it looks so subtle that people often think they're doing it wrong. You sit upright in a chair, feet flat, and you rotate your torso to the right, bringing your left hand to the outside of your right knee and your right hand to the back of the chair or the armrest. You hold that twist for 5 deep breaths, then you return to center and repeat on the other side. That's it. No yanking, no forcing, just a gentle rotation that wakes up the small muscles along your spine called the multifidus muscles. These are the postural stabilizers that keep your vertebrae stacked, and when they weaken, your spine starts to collapse forward into the hunch that makes you look 20 years older and feel even worse. Here's what most people don't realize. That forward hunch isn't about your upper back or your shoulders. It's about your mid and lower spine losing the ability to extend and rotate. When those segments stiffen, your body compensates by rounding your shoulders and dropping your head, and suddenly you're staring at the ground instead of the horizon. The seated twist reverses that stiffening by mobilizing each spinal segment through rotation. Rotation is the movement your spine loses first and regains last, which is why most stretching programs that only teach forward bends and back bends never fix the hunch. You have to rotate. Research from spine rehabilitation centers has shown that twice daily rotation holds, just 5 breaths per side, can increase thoracic rotation by 15 degrees in 4 weeks. 15 degrees is the difference between being able to check your blind spot while driving and having to turn your whole body. It's the difference between reaching behind you for a seatbelt and struggling every single time. I'll tell you about Janet, 73, former teacher from Oregon, who came to me complaining of upper back pain that her doctor had dismissed as arthritis. She'd tried heat, ice, massage, nothing helped. When I watched her sit, I saw the problem immediately. Her spine was locked in a forward curve, and every time she tried to sit up straight, she was fighting her own muscles. I taught her the seated twist and told her to do it every morning after her coffee and every evening before bed. She called me 4 days later, which almost never happens that fast, and said the pain was 50% better. By 2 weeks, it was gone. Not reduced, gone. What happened was simple. The twist restored motion to her thoracic spine, and once those joints started moving again, the muscles around them stopped spasming. Pain is often your body's way of protecting a stiff joint, and when you unstiffen the joint, the pain has no reason to exist. Janet now does her twist religiously, twice a day, and she says she feels taller. She probably is taller because her spine is stacked instead of collapsed. That's not a metaphor, that's measurable. Protocol for the seated twist. Sit tall in a chair with your feet hip-width apart and flat on the floor. Inhale and lengthen your spine. Imagine a string pulling the crown of your head toward the ceiling. Exhale and rotate your torso to the right, placing your left hand on the outside of your right knee and your right hand on the back of the chair. Don't pull with your arms, let your torso do the rotating. Hold for 5 slow breaths. Each inhale lengthening your spine a tiny bit more, each exhale deepening the twist a fraction. Return to center and repeat on the left. Do this twice a day, morning and evening. If you feel any sharp pain, stop immediately, you're twisting too hard. This should feel like a gentle wake-up, not a deep stretch. Over time, you'll notice you can rotate farther without effort. That's your spine regaining the motion it lost. Celebrate that. It means you're reversing years of stiffness one breath at a time. Movement 4 shifts to your hips, and it's called shiko. In sumo culture, though, the version we use is much less intense than what wrestlers perform. You stand with your feet wider than hip width, toes pointed slightly out, and you shift your weight onto your right leg while bending your right knee and keeping your left leg straight. Then you shift to the left. Back and forth, slow and controlled, for 1 minute. This is a lateral weight shift, and it trains something critical that almost no Western exercise addresses: your ability to load one hip fully while the other hip remains stable. Every step you take is a single-leg stance for a fraction of a second, and if your hip can't handle that load, your body wobbles and your knee collapses inward and your ankle rolls. The lateral shift teaches your hip stabilizers, especially your gluteus medius, to fire hard and fast. That muscle is the primary defense against a fall, and it's also the first muscle to weaken when you sit too much. Data from Gait Labs shows that hip abductor weakness, meaning weak glute medius, is present in more than 60% of older adults who report balance problems. The weakness isn't from age, it's from disuse. You can walk 10,000 steps a day and still have weak hip abductors because walking forward doesn't challenge them. You need lateral load. The Japanese understood this centuries ago. Sumo training is built on lateral movement because it builds the foundation for power and stability. We're not asking you to fight in a ring. We're borrowing the movement pattern that makes those athletes almost impossible to knock over. 1 minute a day of slow, controlled lateral shifting will wake up muscles you forgot you had, and those muscles will repay you by catching you the next time you step off a curb wrong or pivot too fast in the kitchen. Let me tell you about George, 66, retired firefighter from Texas, who had knee pain so bad he was considering surgery. His orthopedist said his cartilage was worn and surgery might help, might not. George was skeptical and wanted to try something else first. I watched him walk and saw his knee caving inward with every step, a sign of weak hip stabilizers. I taught him the lateral shift and told him to do it every morning. 1 minute, no weights, just body weight. He thought it was too easy. I told him to trust the process. 3 weeks later, his knee pain was 70% gone. 6 weeks later, he was hiking again. No surgery. What happened? His glute medius woke up and started doing its job, which is to keep his femur aligned so his knee doesn't twist with every step. Once the alignment was restored, the pain disappeared. George still does his lateral shifts every single day because he never wants to go back to that pain. He tells everyone he knows about it, to the point where his friends are tired of hearing it. But I told him to keep talking because most people have no idea this movement exists. Here's your protocol. Stand with your feet wider than your hips, toes angled out about 30 degrees. Keep your chest lifted and your core gently engaged. Shift your weight onto your right leg, bending your right knee and keeping your left leg straight. You should feel a stretch in your left inner thigh and a strong contraction in your right hip. Hold for 2 seconds, then shift to the left. Go back and forth for 1 minute. Move slowly. This is not a cardio drill. You're teaching your nervous system to stabilize under load. If you feel unstable, hold on to the back of a chair with one hand. As you get stronger, let go of the chair and eventually add a tiny pause at the bottom of each shift to increase the challenge. If your knees hurt, reduce the depth of the bend. You don't need to go low, you just need to load the hip. Some people feel this in their inner thighs, some in their outer hips. Both are correct. You're mobilizing and strengthening at the same time. Movement 5 is the simplest and the shortest, and it's also the one that delivers the most dramatic result in the least amount of time. It's called Kakato Otoshi, which means heel drop, and it consists of standing on a small step or a thick book, rising up onto your toes, and then dropping your heels down below the level of the step so you feel a stretch in your calves. You do this 10 times, slow and controlled. The entire drill takes about 45 seconds. Why does this matter? Because your calf muscles are your second heart. When they contract, they squeeze the veins in your lower legs and push blood back up toward your heart against gravity. When they weaken, circulation in your legs slows down, fluid pools in your ankles, and your risk of blood clots and varicose veins climbs. But the circulatory benefit is only half the story. The heel drop also loads your Achilles tendon in a way that triggers a reflex arc in your spinal cord, a direct connection between your calf and your balance centers that doesn't even pass through your conscious brain. By loading that tendon every morning, you keep that reflex sharp. There's evidence from studies on fall prevention showing that calf strength correlates directly with single-leg balance time. People with strong calves can stand on one leg longer, period. The mechanism is partly circulatory, your brain gets better blood flow so it processes balance signals faster, and partly mechanical, strong calves stabilize your ankle, which is the first joint to react when you start to fall. The heel drop improves both at once. You're strengthening the muscle, stretching the tendon, and training the reflex. It's the most efficient movement in the entire sequence. If you could only do one exercise for the rest of your life and you wanted to stay upright and independent, this would be the one I'd recommend. That's how powerful it is. I want to tell you about Linda, 74, retired nurse from Colorado, who had swollen ankles every single evening and had started wearing compression socks around the clock. Her doctor said it was venous insufficiency, a fancy term for weak circulation, and told her to elevate her legs whenever possible. She did that for months with minimal improvement. I taught her the heel drop and explained the second heart concept. She started doing 10 drops every morning on her front step before walking to get the mail. Within 1 week, the swelling was noticeably less. Within 3 weeks, she stopped wearing the compression socks during the day and only used them on long car trips. Her legs felt lighter, her words, like she'd been walking through mud before and someone had drained the swamp. That's what happens when you reactivate your calf pump. Fluid that's been sitting in your ankles for months finally gets pushed back into circulation. Linda also told me her balance improved, but she wasn't sure why. I explained the reflex arc and she said it made sense because she felt more stable going downstairs. That's the Achilles reflex doing its job, catching her before she even knows she's off balance. Here's the protocol. Stand on the edge of a step or a sturdy book about 2 inches high. Hold on to a railing or wall for safety. Rise up onto your toes as high as you can. Pause for 1 second, then slowly lower your heels down below the level of the step until you feel a stretch in your calves. Pause for 1 second in the stretched position, then rise back up. That's 1 rep. Do 10 reps, slow and controlled. The key is the eccentric phase, the lowering, because that's where the tendon gets loaded and the reflex gets trained. If you bounce or rush, you lose the benefit. Some people feel a mild ache in their calves the first few days. That's normal. It means the muscle is waking up. If you feel sharp pain in your Achilles, stop and use a smaller range of motion. You can build up over time. As you get stronger, add a second set of 10 or do the drops on 1 leg at a time. Single-leg heel drops are advanced, but they'll make your calves bulletproof. Now, let's talk about how to sequence these 5 movements every single morning so they become automatic. You wake up, you sit on the edge of your bed, and you do the toe grip for 30 seconds per foot. That's movement 1. Then you walk to the bathroom, start brushing your teeth, and stand on one leg for the full 2 minutes. That's movement 2. After you rinse, you sit down in a chair, maybe at the kitchen table with your coffee, and you do the seated twist. 5 breaths per side. That's movement 3. Then you stand up and do the lateral weight shift for 1 minute. That's movement 4. Finally, you walk to your front step, or find a sturdy book and do 10 heel drops. That's movement 5. Total time: 5 minutes, maybe 6 if you move slowly. You do this every single morning in the same order, and within 1 week it will feel as automatic as brushing your teeth. Your body will start to expect it, and you'll actually feel off if you skip a day. The beauty of this sequence is that it's progressive. Movement 1 wakes up your toes and your foot nerves. Movement 2 uses that nerve activation to challenge your balance. Movement 3 mobilizes your spine so your posture is better for movements 4 and 5. Movement 4 loads your hips laterally, which prepares your legs for the calf work in movement 5. And movement 5 finishes by priming your circulation and your reflexes for the rest of the day. It's not random, it's a chain. Each link supports the next. If you do them out of order, you'll still get benefits, but you'll lose the compounding effect. Stick to the order. Make it a ritual. Rituals are more powerful than routines because they carry intention. You're not just exercising, you're rebuilding the connection between your brain and your body. That intention makes the movements more effective because your nervous system responds to focus. Here's something most people don't consider. These movements are also diagnostic. They tell you where you're weak. If you can't grip the towel with your toes, your foot nerves are asleep. If you can't stand on one leg for more than a few seconds, your vestibular system is impaired. If the seated twist feels impossible, your spine is locked. If the lateral shift makes your hips burn, your glute medius is weak. If the heel drop hurts, your Achilles is tight. Each movement exposes a problem and simultaneously fixes it. That dual function is rare. Most tests tell you what's wrong but don't offer a solution. This sequence is both the test and the cure, and because you do it every day, you can track your progress in real time. You'll notice the towel moving farther, the single leg time increasing, the twist deepening, the shift feeling smoother, the heel drop becoming effortless. Those are wins you can measure, and measuring progress is the key to staying motivated. Let me tell you about Arthur, 78 retired engineer from Pennsylvania, who started this sequence after his third fall sent him to the emergency room with a broken wrist. His adult children were pushing him to move into assisted living, and he was terrified of losing his independence. I told him if he did these 5 movements every single morning for 30 days, I believed he could stay in his home. He committed. Day 1 was rough. He couldn't grip the towel, couldn't stand on one leg for more than 3 seconds, couldn't twist his spine more than a few degrees. But he kept going. By day 10, he was gripping the towel and his single leg time had doubled. By day 20, he was twisting almost 90 degrees and his lateral shift felt strong. By day 30, he told me he felt like a different person. He was walking faster, standing taller, sleeping better. His kids visited and noticed the change immediately. They stopped talking about assisted living. Arthur is still in his home 2 years later, and he still does his 5-minute ritual every single morning without fail. He says it's the best 5 minutes of his day because it reminds him he's still capable. That psychological shift is just as important as the physical one. When you prove to yourself every morning that your body still works, you stop living in fear of it failing. Now, I want to address a question that's probably forming in your mind. What if you have limitations? What if you've already had a stroke, or you have severe arthritis, or you use a walker? Can you still do these movements? The answer is yes, with modifications. For the toe grip, you can start by just wiggling your toes, no towel required. For the single leg balance, you can hold onto a counter with both hands and just shift your weight onto one foot without lifting the other foot off the ground. For the seated twist, you can place a pillow behind your lower back for support and twist only as far as feels comfortable. For the lateral shift, you can hold on to a sturdy table and reduce the range of motion. For the heel drop, you can do it on flat ground instead of a step, just rising onto your toes without the lowering phase. Every movement has a scaled version. The key is to start where you are, not where you wish you were, and to progress gradually. Even the scaled versions send signals to your nervous system. Even small movements rebuild the wire. I worked with a woman named Doris, 82, who'd had a stroke 5 years earlier and still had weakness on her right side. She used a cane and was convinced she'd never improve beyond where she was. I taught her the scaled versions and told her to do whatever she could. She started with toe wiggles, weight shifts while holding a counter, and seated twists with a pillow. Within 2 weeks, she told me her right foot felt more awake. Within a month, she was doing the full toe grip on her left foot and a partial grip on her right. Within 3 months, she was standing on her left leg for 30 seconds and doing mini heel drops on flat ground. She still uses her cane, but she's faster and more confident, and she's stopped declining invitations to family events because she's no longer afraid she'll fall in an unfamiliar place. That confidence is everything. It's the difference between living and just existing. Let me give you one more piece of the puzzle. Breath. Every movement in this sequence should be paired with intentional breathing. Inhale through your nose, exhale through your mouth, slow and steady. Your nervous system has 2 modes, sympathetic, which is fight or flight, and parasympathetic, which is rest and digest. When you breathe slowly and deeply, you activate the parasympathetic system, and that tells your muscles to relax and your brain to focus. When you hold your breath or breathe shallowly, you activate the sympathetic system, and that creates tension and makes the movements harder. So as you grip the towel with your toes, breathe slowly. As you stand on one leg, breathe slowly. As you twist, breathe slowly. As you shift laterally, breathe slowly. As you drop your heels, breathe slowly. The breath is the thread that ties the movements together. It's what transforms 5 separate drills into an integrated ritual. Without the breath, you're just going through the motions. With the breath, you're rewiring your nervous system at the deepest level. Here's a test you can do right now to see how much room for improvement you have. Stand up, pick a spot on the wall across from you, and lift one foot off the ground. Start a timer. How long can you hold it without wobbling or putting your foot down? If you can't make it to 10 seconds, you have significant balance impairment and you need this sequence urgently. If you can hold for 10 to 20 seconds, you're in the average range for someone over 60, but there's still plenty of room to improve. If you can hold for 30 seconds or more, you're in good shape, but don't get complacent because balance declines fast if you stop challenging it. Whatever your number is, write it down. Do this 5-minute sequence every morning for 2 weeks and then test yourself again. You'll be shocked at how much your number improves. That improvement isn't magic, it's neuroplasticity. Your brain is relearning a skill it thought it had lost. And if it can relearn balance, it can relearn anything. One more thing before we finish. This sequence is designed to be done alone at home with 0 equipment and 0 cost. You don't need a gym membership. You don't need a trainer. You don't need special clothes or shoes. You need a chair, a towel, a step, or a book, and 5 minutes. That accessibility is intentional. The moment you add barriers, cost, travel time, special gear, you create excuses not to do it. This has no excuses. You can start tomorrow morning. You can start right now if you want. The only requirement is consistency. 5 minutes every single morning. Not 5 days a week, not when you remember, every single morning. Your nervous system adapts to consistency. It ignores randomness. If you do this once in a while, you'll get a little benefit. If you do it every day, you'll get a complete transformation. I've seen 70-year-olds regain balance they lost at 60. I've seen 80-year-olds move with confidence they haven't felt in a decade. I've seen people cancel joint replacement surgeries, stop using walkers, return to hiking and dancing and traveling, all because they committed to 5 minutes a morning. This isn't a miracle. It's not a secret the medical establishment is hiding from you. It's just a set of movements that happen to target the exact systems that fail first as you age. Nerve-muscle communication, vestibular function, spinal mobility, hip stability, and calf strength. Western medicine waits until something breaks and then tries to fix it. Japanese movement therapy assumes nothing is broken, it's just asleep, and it wakes it up gently and consistently until it functions again. That philosophy is why their elderly population stays independent longer. And now you have access to the same tools. So here's my final question for you, and I want you to drop your answer in the comments. Which of these 5 movements surprised you the most, and which one are you going to start with tomorrow morning? Are you going to begin with the toe grip because you've never thought about your foot nerves? Or the single leg balance because you know that's your weak spot? Or the seated twist because your spine feels locked? Or the lateral shift because your hips are tight? Or the heel drop because your circulation needs help? Tell me which one speaks to you and why, because I read every comment and I learned from your experiences. Your story might be the encouragement someone else needs to start. And if you commit to doing this sequence every day for the next 2 weeks, come back and let me know what changed. I promise you'll have something to report. Your body wants to move well. It's been waiting for you to give it the right signals. These 5 movements are those signals. 5 minutes, every morning, starting tomorrow. That's all it takes.